If you're settling in for the night, let your mind drift for a moment. Back to a time long before cities touched the sky, before roads stretched across the continent, when the center of North America held a quiet civilization whose story still rests beneath the grass. Tonight, we travel to the Mississippi River Valley, where the echoes of an ancient city continue to rise from soft, earthen mounds. A place built with patience. A place shaped by hands we will never meet. And a place whose mysteries linger in the warm silence of the land. So, take a slow breath. Let your shoulders ease. And allow the story of Cahokia and its quiet mound builders to unfold gently around you. There is no rush here. Only calm curiosity. And a history that invites you to listen just a little closer. In the quiet stretch of land where the Mississippi River once wandered a little wider and a little wilder, the story of Cahokia begins. It begins softly, the way early morning light settles on a field before anyone has risen, when the world feels unhurried and full of possibility. Imagine the river valley long before the noise of modern life, when the air carried the scent of wet soil and tall grasses brushed against one another in slow, swaying rhythms. The sunlight would have fallen gently across miles of open earth, and the land itself seemed patient, holding the memories of generations who walked here, farmed here, and raised families beneath broad skies. As you listen, picture this place not as a distant archaeological site, but as a living landscape filled with movement and warmth. Birds gliding overhead in easy circles, insects humming in the reeds, and the steady murmur of river water drifting along its banks. It was here, in these quiet plains, that a city once rose, one built not from stone blocks or towering walls, but from the earth itself. A city that seemed to grow out of the land the way forests grow from a river's edge. A city known today as Cahokia. To understand the beginning of this story, imagine yourself standing on that soil 1,000 years ago. The ground beneath your feet would feel firm, yet full of life. The smell of wildflowers and damp clay would linger in the air. And just ahead, you might catch sight of people moving slowly in the early light, their silhouettes framed against the vastness of the open prairie. These were the ancestors of the Mississippian world, builders of mounds and keepers of traditions carried through countless seasons. They lived in harmony with the rhythms of the river, following its floods, its currents, and its gifts of fertile soil. Their world was simple, yet rich with meaning. Families gathered in small wooden homes clustered around wide plazas. Farmers tended to fields of corn, beans, and squash, the familiar crops that had become the foundation of life in many parts of ancient North America. Children played near the edge of the settlement, running across packed earth paths, their laughter rising into the morning air. Smoke curled from cooking fires, carrying the gentle aroma of meals shared in communal warmth. As you picture this place, let your mind move slowly, the way the people themselves might have moved through a day shaped not by clocks or schedules, but by the sun's slow arc across the sky. Life here flowed at the pace of nature, never rushed, never forced. Even the great city that would one day emerge did so gradually, shaped by countless hands working together over many years. In the earliest days of Cahokia, there were no grand mounds yet, no towering earthworks reaching toward the sky. Instead, there were small clusters of homes, each one built carefully and maintained with care. These early families chose this place because the land was generous and promising. The nearby river carried fish and freshwater mussels. The fields offered fertile ground for crops. And the forests surrounding the valley provided wood, game, and shelter. The people who settled here understood how to listen to the land, how to read the subtle changes in wind and water, and how to build a life rooted in the cycles of the earth. Over time, as more families arrived and more generations were born, the village grew. Paths widened into walkways. Fields expanded and deepened in color. The sounds of life, voices, tools, footsteps, blended into a steady hum that rose and fell throughout each day. And slowly, almost without conscious design, this small settlement began to feel like something larger. Something with purpose. Something with a spirit that connected each person to the greater whole. What is most remarkable about this early growth is not the size of the city that would come, but the harmony that shaped its foundation. The people of Cahokia were builders, yes, but they were also listeners, careful observers who watched the stars, the seasons, and the shifting patterns of the natural world. Their decisions were guided not only by practical needs, but by a deep sense of belonging to a universe far bigger than themselves. And it was this quiet sense of connection that inspired the first mounds. Imagine now the earliest earthworks rising from the ground, not as monuments to power, but as gentle expressions of community. The people carried baskets of soil in patient lines, moving in rhythm with one another. Layer upon layer, the earth grew upward, shaped by hands that understood the land's texture, its weight, and its quiet willingness to hold memory. These first mounds were modest, yet meaningful, places for gatherings, ceremonies, and watching the turning of the seasons. If you listen carefully to the story, you might sense a soft current of mystery beginning to form. Not a sharp or frightening mystery, but one that drifts gently at the edge of understanding. For even now, after centuries of study, we still do not fully know why Cahokia rose where it did, or why its people chose to build in such extraordinary ways. We know that they were skilled farmers and careful planners. We know that they valued community and ceremony. But there is something more, something quieter and less certain, hidden in the early days of the city's rise. Something that invites us to wonder, perhaps it was the land itself that called to them. Perhaps the people sensed an energy here, a feeling of harmony that encouraged them to build, to dream, and to gather in increasing numbers. Or perhaps the river's steady presence, so calm and constant, offered a sense of grounding that shaped their lives. Whatever the reason, the village grew into a town, and the town grew into a city unlike anything else in ancient North America. As you imagine this early chapter unfolding, feel yourself drifting deeper into the landscape, letting the sounds and sensations linger. The rustle of reeds along the riverbank. The distant crackle of a cooking fire. The soft murmur of voices carried on a gentle breeze. Everything moves slowly here, wrapped in the steady rhythm of everyday life. The people worked the fields with quiet patience, their hands brushing against the leaves of ripening corn. They crafted tools from wood and stone, smoothing each surface until it fit perfectly in their grasp. They wove baskets with intricate patterns, each curve and twist shaped by years of practice. And in the evenings, as the light dimmed and the first stars appeared above the wide prairie, families gathered to share food, stories, and the comfort of being together. Over the centuries, this peaceful world expanded. More homes were built. More paths appeared. More people traveled from distant places, drawn by the vibrancy of the growing city. And with each generation, the culture deepened, shaped by memories passed from elders to children, stories of ancestors, of rivers, of the sky and the earth. Yet even in these early days, when life felt steady and rooted, the faintest hint of mystery lingered, like a gentle question carried on the breeze. What inspired the people to believe this land could become something extraordinary? What dreams stirred in their minds as they shaped the earth into rising forms? What whispers of purpose guided their hands? For now, these questions remain soft and unresolved, resting quietly in the background as the story continues. Before we move to the next chapter, let the image of early Cahokia rest in your thoughts: the warm light across the fields, the slow movement of people through their daily tasks, the sound of the river drifting steadily through the valley. Let the scene settle in your imagination, calm and unhurried, like a breath held between moments, and when you are ready, the next part of the story will wait for you, unfolding gently as the city begins to grow. In the soft quiet of the Mississippi River Valley, the city of Cahokia begins to take shape, not all at once, but slowly, gently, almost as if it were growing from the soil itself. Part 2 of this story brings you deeper inside the ancient city, into the daily rhythms and the textured lives of the people who called this place home. As you listen, imagine yourself walking into a world that feels warm and alive, yet calm enough to quiet the mind. Life in Cahokia moved with the sun. When the morning light touched the rooftops of wooden homes, the city stirred awake in soft waves. Smoke curled upward from clay hearths. The steady sound of footsteps pressed patterns into the earth. Families greeted the day with calm routine, preparing meals, tending to small gardens, or tying bundles of corn for storage. Each home, though simple, was filled with the warmth of shared life: woven mats on the ground, clay pots arranged neatly along the walls, and the faint scent of herbs drying above the cooking space. The houses themselves, shaped carefully from wood, reeds, and clay, formed clusters around wide open plazas. These plazas acted like quiet heartbeats for the city, places where people gathered for trading, talking, or simply sharing in the comfort of community. Some days were busy with movement, but many days were slow and peaceful, filled with the familiar sounds of daily tasks: the tapping of stone tools, the rustle of woven baskets, the soft familiar hum of voices drifting from one home to another. As you picture this world, imagine walking along one of the worn pathways that connected each neighborhood. The path bends gently through clusters of homes and opens toward larger spaces where families gather. Chickens cluck softly near the edges of the walkway. Children play in the dust, drawing shapes with sticks or weaving small patterns into the earth. The air carries the smell of cooking cornmeal and wood smoke, and far out in the fields, farmers move steadily among rows of tall corn, their hands brushing against leaves that sway lightly in the breeze. From where you stand, you can see the center of the city rising in the distance: Monk's Mound, the great earthen pyramid that dominates the horizon. Even from far away, it seems impossibly large, its terraced sides rising in gentle steps toward the sky. The mound feels ancient and patient, like a mountain shaped by human hands. People climb its ramps each day, their silhouette small against the broad face of the earthwork. At the top, a large wooden structure once stood, a place for leaders to meet, observe the land, and guide the flow of civic life. But Cahokia was not only defined by its largest mound. The landscape around you is dotted with dozens of smaller mounds, each one built with purpose. Some served as platforms for important buildings. Others held ceremonial meaning. A few may have been burial mounds, honoring ancestors who shaped the identity of the community. Each mound was created slowly, with thousands of hands carrying baskets of soil in careful rhythm. The earth beneath your feet is not just ground, it is memory, built layer by layer. As you continue walking, the path leads you toward a circular arrangement of tall wooden posts set into the earth. This is Woodhenge, the city's solar calendar. Imagine the tall red cedar posts standing in a perfect ring, each one marking a place where the sun aligns during the year, solstices, equinoxes, and other important seasonal moments. At dawn on certain days, the sunlight passes through the posts in a perfect line, signaling changes in the agricultural cycle. People gather quietly at these moments, watching the sky with reverence and calm attention. It was not just a tool for tracking time. It was a reminder that the people of Cahokia lived in harmony with the turning of the seasons. The city itself was always alive, but never frantic. In the market areas, people traded goods from across far distances, shells from the Gulf Coast, copper from the Great Lakes, finely crafted stone tools, woven baskets, and bright pigments used for painting homes or decorating clothing. Cahokia was a place where many cultures met, each bringing stories, skills, and traditions. Yet everything blended seamlessly into the calm pulse of daily life. At midday, the sun warms the packed earth beneath your feet. You can hear animals moving in the nearby forest, and the distant murmur of water flowing through small streams that twist through the city. If you stand still for a moment, you may notice a feeling that is hard to describe, a sense of order, a sense of connection. The city is large, with tens of thousands of people moving through it, yet it does not feel overwhelming. Instead, it feels balanced, shaped not by force or fear, but by shared purpose and quiet cooperation. Among the people of Cahokia were artisans whose hands knew the language of material. Potters shaped elegant vessels with graceful curves. Woodworkers carved tools and figures, smoothing each surface until it felt soft beneath the fingertips. Stoneworkers chipped flint and chert into fine arrowheads or knives. And painters mixed pigments from minerals and plants, decorating walls, wood, and bodies with symbols that held meaning far beyond their appearance. The sound of daily work was never harsh. It was steady and rhythmic, soft tapping, gentle scraping, and the occasional burst of laughter shared among neighbors. Daily life, though filled with activity, was wrapped in an atmosphere of calm. Even the busiest moments carried a sense of natural flow. In the evenings, the city changed its tone. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, the sky turned shades of amber and rose. Families gathered near their homes, sharing simple meals and speaking in low, soothing voices. The fires burned gently, creating a flickering glow that spread across the settlement like a warm blanket. From the top of the great mound, one could see dozens of these small points of light glowing in the twilight, each one marking a home filled with life, warmth, and stories passed from one generation to the next. And yet, even in these peaceful scenes, the quiet thread of mystery continues to weave through the story. For though we understand much about daily life here, what they ate, how they dressed, how they built their homes, there is still much we do not know. We do not know the names of their leaders, the full meaning of their symbols, or the stories they told around their fires. We do not know the details of their beliefs, or how they viewed the world beyond their horizons. These unspoken details drift like a soft mist over the city's history, creating a gentle wonder that invites reflection rather than urgency. As night spreads across the valley, the city settles into rest. The sound of insects fills the air, rising and falling in calming waves. The river continues its slow journey toward the south, carrying moonlight across its surface. And high on the mound, the quiet silhouette of a wooden structure stands against the stars, watching over the sleeping city. Let this image settle with you for a moment, a peaceful place, full of life yet wrapped in stillness. A city where people walked barefoot across cool earth, where children learned from their elders, and where the land itself felt like part of the community. A place where the rhythms of nature guided everything, giving life its shape and meaning. As you take a breath and let the calm of Cahokia's inner life rest in your imagination, feel the gentle pull of curiosity guiding you forward. There is more to uncover, more to understand, more quiet mysteries waiting in the next chapter of this ancient city's story. When you're ready, the story will continue, unfolding softly like the slow drift of river water beneath the moon's gentle light. In the days that followed, the quiet world of Cahokia settled more deeply into Robert's thoughts. He found himself walking the grounds again and again, following the same paths he had traced earlier, yet each time feeling as though they led him somewhere new. The mounds, patient and still beneath the wide Midwestern sky, seemed to shift in meaning with every visit, as if the earth itself carried different memories depending on the light of day, or the softness of the air, or the mood of the listener. Robert had begun to imagine the city not as a set of ruins, but as a breathing place, full of gentle human stories that had slowly blended into the soil. As he walked, he found himself whispering questions he had not fully formed, letting them drift across the fields where homes had once stood. Sometimes he wondered if the people who lived here, thousands of them, moving through a city larger than London in its time, ever sensed that far in the future someone would be wandering those same paths, tracing those same lines in the dust. He returned early one morning, when the sun sat low and soft over the prairie. The grass carried a light shimmer from the night's cool air, and the horizon stretched in pale gold. There were no footsteps, no engine noise, no signs of anyone else exploring at that hour. It gave the land a sense of perfect stillness, like a long-held breath. He stood at the base of Monk's Mound and looked upward, letting his eyes follow the long earthen slope, the terraces rising in gentle stages. Something about the size of it always surprised him. Even after seeing it many times, his mind struggled to connect its shape with human hands, hands that did not have metal tools or draft animals, yet built something that could anchor an entire civilization. He began climbing slowly, taking his time. Each step felt like entering a deeper moment of quiet, one that seemed to fold around him as naturally as morning light settles into a valley. When he reached the top, the view opened wide. He could see the faint lines where ancient avenues had once crossed the city. He could see the ridges where neighborhoods had been arranged. Even if he could not see the people who once lived here, he felt them in small ways, imagining children chasing each other through open courtyards, elders sitting in shaded spaces, traders passing through with baskets of stone, copper, pottery, and shell. As he stood there, a soft realization came to him. The mystery of Cahokia wasn't simply a puzzle to solve. It was a memory of human life at a scale and richness that had survived only through traces. The city's quiet, its disappearance, its unanswered questions, they were all part of a single, gentle story about time, and about the way lives fade but never fully vanish. Later that day, Robert settled near a smaller mound at the city's northern edge. It wasn't as tall or as wide as Monk's Mound, yet it felt intimate in a way he couldn't quite explain. The earth here carried a different shape, more rounded, more personal. He sat in the grass and allowed himself to picture a moment from the city's past, perhaps a gathering of people sharing food during a harvest, or travelers stopping here after a long journey along the Mississippi River. The more he imagined, the more real it felt, as if memory and landscape were blending together. He leaned back gently and looked toward the sky. A slow, drifting cloud passed overhead, and he followed its shape as it moved eastward. It made him think of another mystery he had read about, the sudden decline of the city. Archaeologists offered many ideas: floods, political shifts, environmental pressures, but none of them felt complete. The people of Cahokia had left behind the shape of their lives, but not the reasons for their departure. Robert found something tender in that uncertainty, as though the silence was a final message, encouraging future listeners to move carefully, to imagine gently. As the day stretched on, he walked toward the Woodhenge reconstruction, a ring of wooden posts arranged like a solar calendar. Standing at its center felt almost like being inside a great clock, one marked not by gears but by sunlight moving across the sky. He imagined the Cahokians gathering here during solstices, watching the sun rise precisely between posts aligned with the seasons. The air in that moment felt soft with the sense of ceremony. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet feeling that people once watched this same sky with the same sense of wonder. Robert lingered there for a long while. He let the simple geometry of the site settle into him, the circle of posts forming a kind of wooden embrace. He closed his eyes, imagining how the morning sun might have cast long beams across the gathering, warming the faces of the people who stood waiting. He wondered if some of them had held the same questions he had, questions about the earth, the sky, the rhythms of seasons, the path of life. It comforted him to think that curiosity itself might be an ancient form of connection. When he finally walked away, he moved with a slower, steadier pace. He passed through areas once filled with houses, their outlines faint in the soil. He tried to picture the simple sounds that would have filled this place long ago, the murmur of voices, the soft clatter of pottery, the gentle echoes of daily life. Even imagining those sounds felt soothing, like listening to distant memories. He reached a small rise in the landscape and sat again, letting a sense of time wash over him. He could feel how the earth had changed, how centuries had softened the edges of what was once a bustling city. Yet there was beauty in the quiet that remained. The stillness carried the echo of something deeply human, the effort to build. To gather, to understand the world, to live in a place with meaning. As the afternoon moved slowly across the sky, he found himself returning to one particular question, not in frustration, but in a gentle, reflective way. What had drawn so many people to Cahokia in the first place? What had made this place, among thousands of miles of river valleys and forests, the center of such a vibrant world? The answer wasn't clear, and perhaps it would never be. But even that uncertainty felt soothing, like a mystery that preferred to remain calm and unhurried. He imagined travelers approaching the city centuries ago, guided by the Mississippi River. He pictured their canoes gliding toward the shore. The water smooth beneath them, the distant mounds rising like soft hills touched by sunlight. It must have been a restful sight, a place that felt welcoming even before one arrived. He wondered if those travelers felt the same quiet comfort he felt now. As evening approached, the light shifted to a warmer, gentler tone. The sky held soft streaks of amber and pale violet. Robert stood slowly and walked once more toward Monk's Mound. He wanted to see the city from above in the evening light, just as he had seen it in the morning. When he reached the top, he found the view even more calming than before. The long shadows made the land appear deeper, as though the earth was settling in for the night. He stood there quietly, feeling the air change around him. The world of Cahokia seemed to ease into a softer form, its ancient presence enveloped by twilight. He thought again of the people who once lived here, the builders, the observers of the sky, the families who made this place their home. He felt a quiet gratitude for them, not for answers they left behind, but for the calm mystery they entrusted to the future. As the last light began to fade, Robert let his thoughts drift gently. The city felt like a whisper stretching across centuries, a reminder that human stories do not always end with explanations. Sometimes they dissolve into land and memory, becoming something to reflect upon rather than solve. He slowly descended the mound, each step carrying him further into the soft evening. The sky deepened, the fields grew dimmer, and the shapes of the mounds blended gently with the horizon. The mystery of Cahokia lingered with him, not as a puzzle, but as a quiet invitation to return, to continue listening. He reached the base of the mound and paused, breathing in the calm air. There was more to learn, more to imagine, more to uncover in this peaceful place. And as the evening settled fully around him, he felt ready to follow the story further, letting its gentle shadows guide him into the next chapter. The evening that followed Robert's quiet reflections seemed to draw him into an even deeper connection with Cahokia. He returned to his small rental room near the site, carrying with him the lingering presence of the ancient city, as if a soft imprint of the mound still rested on his thoughts. That night, he found it difficult to sleep, not from restlessness, but from a sense of gentle anticipation, as though the story of Cahokia was slowly opening itself to him in layers, inviting him to look just a little closer. He rose early the next morning, before the sun had fully crested the horizon. The world was muted, wrapped in the faint coolness that comes just before daylight settles in. As he stepped outside, he felt a quiet tug to return to the site, to follow a path he had not walked yet, one that led deeper toward the smaller clusters of mounds that were easy to overlook. He had seen them from a distance, barely noticeable in the vast field, but something about their shape had stayed with him. When he arrived, the land was touched with pale morning light. The sky stretched open above him, wide and soft, with only a thin line of gold along the eastern edge. He walked slowly, letting his footsteps fall in a steady rhythm across the grass. The smaller mounds rose in gentle curves, their shapes blending into the early glow. They did not carry the impressive height of Monk's Mound or the ceremonial presence of the Woodhenge area. Yet the subtlety of their form made them feel intimate, almost like private memories held close by the earth. Robert approached one of the more modest mounds and stood before it for a long moment. It was modest in height, just a lifted shape on the landscape, but something about its position, slightly angled toward the river, gently rising from the surrounding plain, gave it a voice of its own. He imagined it as a place connected to ordinary life rather than grand rituals. Perhaps people had lived nearby, waking each morning to the soft sound of wind moving over the grass, carrying traces of laughter, work, and daily gathering. He took a seat on the ground and let his palms settle in the grass. The blades felt cool and faintly damp. He imagined the families who once lived here, women grinding corn in quiet rhythms, men returning from the river with fish, children running across the open fields. Even though he could not see them, the land seemed to remember their movements in the gentle slopes and worn traces of old pathways. He leaned back slightly, letting his gaze drift across the mounds. The mystery of Cahokia held many layers, but the one that kept returning to him was the simple question of how so many people lived together in harmony for centuries. Ancient cities often carried stories of conflict, yet here the silence felt remarkably peaceful, as though the land itself had settled into its history without tension. It made him think that the people who lived in Cahokia might have shaped a community rooted in subtle balance, one woven from shared belief, cooperation, and a deep awareness of their environment. As he sat quietly, he noticed a line of trees far beyond the mounds, marking where the river once shifted in its course. The Mississippi had shaped this land for thousands of years, carving bends and branches across the plain. It had brought trade, stories, and people from distant regions. Robert imagined canoes gliding through its waters long ago, carrying goods that traveled farther than most might expect: copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf Coast, stone from distant quarries. The idea that Cahokia had been part of a vast network of movement and exchange made the quiet field seem even more alive. He stood again and continued walking, following the faint traces of a pathway that curved between several small mounds. It felt like walking through an old neighborhood where the houses had vanished, but the shape of the community lingered in the arrangement of the land. Each low rise seemed like a soft reminder of the people who once gathered around fires, shared meals, and told stories beneath the night sky. At one point, he paused near a mound that seemed slightly different from the others. Its slope was smoother, more rounded, as if shaped with extra care. He gently touched the earth and felt a subtle warmth rising from it as the sun climbed higher. He imagined this mound as a resting place for someone once held in great respect. Not a ruler in the dramatic sense, but perhaps a community leader, a healer, or a storyteller whose memory the people wanted to preserve through earth shaped with loving patience. The thought made Robert feel a quiet tenderness for a person he could never know. In that moment, he realized that Cahokia's mystery was woven not only from grand structures but from countless small lives, each one contributing to the city's presence in ways that could no longer be clearly traced. The silence did not erase them, it only softened their stories. Blending them into the soil that now held their echo, he walked on until he reached a slightly higher rise in the land, offering a gentle view across the site. From there, the mounds appeared not as scattered shapes but as part of a larger pattern. Their arrangement created a subtle harmony, lines that seemed to follow the natural flow of the land and the distant curve of the river. Standing there, Robert felt that the people of Cahokia had seen the world in a way that connected the earth, the sky, and community life into a single expression. He stayed on the rise for a long time, letting the morning unfold into afternoon. As the sun warmed the fields, distant insects hummed softly, and a peaceful stillness settled across the land. Robert breathed in the calm air and allowed himself to reflect on everything he had learned, and everything he still did not know. He wondered about the final centuries of Cahokia's life. What gentle shifts had taken place as the city slowly changed? Did families decide to move elsewhere in small groups, or did the community gradually loosen its ties as new generations grew restless? Perhaps the decline was not sudden or dramatic, but simply a long, quiet transition, like embers cooling after a fire. The idea felt soothing, a reminder that change does not always come in sharp lines, sometimes it unfolds through soft, nearly imperceptible steps. When the afternoon light began to soften, Robert returned to Monk's Mound once more. He climbed with the same slow, reflective pace he had taken before, feeling the familiar slope beneath his feet. The top greeted him with a warm view of the land bathed in gentle gold. The shadow of the mound stretched long across the field, merging with the shapes of the smaller mounds he had visited earlier. He stood there in the glow, letting the quiet settle around him. The city, though vanished in form, felt wholly present in atmosphere. It carried the memory of people who lived with intention, who built with patience, who understood their environment in ways that modern life often overlooks. Their legacy remained not in monuments of stone but in the peaceful shape of the land itself. Robert breathed deeply and allowed the calm to fill him. The mystery of Cahokia no longer felt like something distant. It felt intimate, woven into the air, as if the earth whispered soft reminders about time, community, and the quiet beauty of lives that leave behind more questions than answers. The sun lowered slowly, casting warm, elongated shadows across the fields. Robert descended the mound and walked back toward the edge of the site. The gentle light gave the mounds a softened outline, making them appear almost like waves rising from a still sea of grass. He paused as he reached the path, feeling a quiet sense of gratitude, for the silence, for the story, for the way the land had welcomed him into its memory. He knew there was more to explore, more to imagine, more to gently uncover. And as the day eased into evening, he felt ready to continue following the story, letting the calm, ancient presence of Cahokia guide him into the next part. The next morning arrived with a softer kind of quiet, one that felt almost expectant, as though Cahokia itself was welcoming Robert back for one final wandering. He woke naturally, without an alarm, with the sense that the story he had been tracing through the mounds was drawing gently toward a resting place. Not an ending, exactly, more like the final curve in a long, unhurried path. He stepped outside into air that carried the cool touch of dawn. A faint shimmer rested on the grass, and the horizon glowed with a pale light that spread slowly across the sky. As he walked toward the sight again, he felt a calmness settle through him, a peaceful understanding that this day would tie together the threads he had been quietly gathering. When he arrived, the land was empty and still, as it often was in the early hours. He stopped for a moment at the entrance path, letting his eyes travel across the familiar shapes of the mounds. They sat in their quiet patience, the same way they had for centuries, holding both memory and mystery in their gentle slopes. Robert decided to explore an area he had only briefly visited before, a place where archaeologists had uncovered traces of everyday structures, homes built from earth and wood, arranged in clusters that once formed neighborhoods. The outlines of these ancient dwellings were faint, visible only in the subtle changes of soil and elevation. Yet even in their simplicity, he felt drawn to them. He walked slowly along the quiet field, imagining the hum of daily life that once filled this place. He pictured the soft sounds of tools shaping wood, the gentle rhythm of baskets being woven, the murmur of voices as families shared food or stories. It was comforting to imagine those ordinary moments, the ones that rarely appear in history books but form the essence of human life. In the stillness of the field, he could almost sense the warmth of old hearth fires, the echo of footsteps in the dust, the gentle laughter that must have drifted into the evening air. The more he imagined these moments, the more he felt connected to the people who once lived here, not through grand events or dramatic mysteries, but through the soft, familiar threads of everyday living. There was something soothing in that thought, a reminder that history is often built from the quietest details. He continued walking until he reached a cluster of small mounds near the tree line. The sun had risen higher by then, warming the air and casting gentle shadows that moved slowly with the morning breeze. He sat down in the grass and leaned back against the earth, feeling a sense of comfort as the land supported him. The mound beneath him felt steady and grounding, as though it held centuries of stories safely within it. As he rested there, he began to reflect on the larger mystery that had woven through his days at Cahokia, the mystery of why the city rose so beautifully, and why it eventually faded. Archaeologists had offered many theories over the years, each one thoughtful, yet none complete. Robert found himself drawn to the idea that the truth might have been a quiet combination of factors: small changes in climate, gentle shifts in the river's course, the gradual movement of families seeking new lands, or the subtle evolution of beliefs and traditions. He liked imagining that the people of Cahokia had not disappeared suddenly, but had simply drifted outward in their own time, carrying their knowledge and stories with them. The city's fading could have been a natural transition, not a collapse. There was something calming in that idea, something that fit the gentle atmosphere of the place. Sitting there, he felt a sense of peace in not knowing the full story. The mystery itself became a soft companion, a reminder that the past does not always reveal all its details, and that some stories are meant to be held with a light touch. The land seemed to support that idea, offering no clear answers, only a deep and patient quiet. Robert rose again as the sun climbed toward midday. He walked for a while along a ridge that stretched toward a distant line of trees, letting the steady movement help settle his thoughts. The landscape around him seemed to open wider the farther he walked, as if inviting him to carry the memory of Cahokia beyond the mounds themselves. Eventually, he found himself drawn back toward Monk's Mound one final time. Its familiar presence rose above the landscape with the calm authority of something built with care and intention. He paused at the base, taking in its full shape, the terraces, the long climb, the way it caught the light and softened its edges in the warm air. He began the ascent with the same slow, thoughtful pace he had taken before. Each step felt like a small part of a farewell, not sad, but gently reflective. When he reached the top, he felt the breeze settle around him in a light, shifting pattern. The view stretched in every direction, wide and unbroken, carrying the soft colors of midday across the fields. From up there, the outlines of Cahokia formed a quiet map. The mounds, the fields, the faint traces of old pathways, all of it lay within a single sweep of the eye. It made the city feel whole, even in its simplicity. Robert stood for a long time, breathing in the calm air, letting the quiet settle into him. He imagined the same view centuries ago, when leaders, families, and visitors might have stood here, watching the patterns of life unfold below. He pictured ceremonies, gatherings, moments of teaching and remembrance. The world must have felt endless from this height, filled with promise and meaning. As the minutes drifted by, Robert felt something shift gently within him, a sense of understanding that wasn't tied to facts or conclusions. It was more like an emotional clarity, a recognition of how deeply human this place was. Cahokia wasn't just an archaeological site or an ancient mystery. It was a testament to human intention, cooperation, and imagination. A place where people came together to build, to celebrate, to observe the heavens, and to shape a world that mattered to them. That realization settled over him like a soft blanket. It made the story feel complete in a quiet, comforting way. After a while, he turned and slowly made his way down the mound. Each step felt unhurried, as if he were being guided not by time but by the gentle pull of the land itself. When he reached the ground again, he took one last long look at the mound rising behind him. Its shape seemed even more peaceful now, blending seamlessly with the horizon. He walked toward the path that led out of the site, moving through the fields he had come to know so well. The grass brushed lightly against his legs, and the warm air drifted past him in soft currents. As he reached the edge of the grounds, he paused, feeling the quiet weight of the journey settle into his memory. Cahokia, with all its unanswered questions and silent beauty, would remain with him. Its mystery had wrapped itself around him gently, not demanding anything, only offering its calm presence. Even as he stepped away, he felt as though he carried a part of it with him, the stillness, the history. The subtle reminder that some stories unfold slowly and live on not through certainty, but through quiet reflection. He breathed in one final moment of the calm air, letting it rest inside him like a closing thought. Then he turned and walked onward, ready to follow the story wherever it led next, guided by the soft echoes of an ancient city that still whispered across the land. As our quiet wander through the past comes to a close, let your thoughts drift like lanterns on a calm, midnight river. Tonight's journey through time has gently folded itself away, settling into the soft hush of the evening. Feel the echoes of old stories fading into the stillness, the world growing quieter, your breath settling into an easy rhythm. History will wait for us, unchanged, unhurried, ready to welcome you back when dawn becomes dusk once more, but for now, let the weight of the day loosen, let the gentle darkness cradle you, and allow sleep to gather you in its patient arms, until our next shared voyage through forgotten moments and whispered centuries. Good night, traveler. Rest well.